the Cloverdale Police Chief.
And hopefully, as we get more attendees, we'll all make sure we, Mike or myself will promote them.
Okay,
But we'll keep an eye out if you see this number.
gotcha.
Some folks can join this link. But good afternoon, Councilmember Wheeler. Good afternoon, Councilmember Morrison. Welcome to your first meeting at the Homelessness Community Advisory Group. I'm David Kelly, City Manager.
And I am the chair, Brian Wheeler, council member.
And I'm the vice chair.
Okay. And Mike, we're gonna have some obviously we have some jumping on here right now, so whoever doesn't make it, I guess, for the meeting, we can scratch them, huh?
That's correct, Chair. I'll continuously update the roll call as people join.
Sounds good, Mike. Thank you.
Speaking of
And Chair, we do have two additional representatives or participants on our community advisory group. Chair, if you want to take the opportunity to recognize them.
I'd like to thanks Kevin Thompson for showing up. Thank you. And Margaret, forgive me on the pronunciation of your last name. Could you help me out with that?
Yeah, it's like.
Slack. Welcome, Mark Slack. I appreciate it. All right, let's move into public comments.
And Chief, Chair, before we do, I just want to let you know Nina from the Commerce has just joined us as well.
Okay, welcome, Nina.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll do video too. What the hell?
There we go.
Hey, Nina. All right, move into public comments. Any person wishing to speak to the council subcommittee on any item not listed on the agenda may do so at this time. Members of the public have the right to speak on any item on the agenda at the time the item comes up for consideration. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the subcommittee is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda. 3 minutes are typically allotted to each speaker.
Thank you, Chair. No one is raising their hands at this time. It looks like we do not have any members of the public virtually or in person.
All right, thank you. And item C, communications. We don't have any communications. And for the previous meeting, September 13th, 2022, approval of the minutes. Does anybody see any issues with the approval of the minutes?
Absolutely not.
None?
I'll make a motion to approve, Chair.
I second that.
Okay, there we go. Minutes approved for the last meeting, Mike.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, now we're going to move into new business. Let me see here if I can get my everything rolling. Forgive me here for a second. Introduction to new representatives. Go ahead.
Marjorie Morgenstern, council member.
Okay. And I am Brian Wheeler. I'm the chair of the Homeless Community Advisory Group, and I'm also a newly elected council member.
And I'd just like to take the opportunity, of course, to welcome our two newest council members. Welcome Councilmember Wheeler, Chair Wheeler, and Vice Chair Councilmember Morgenstern. I just want to kind of preface this conversation with recognition that there is a lot going on in the area of homelessness response. Part of the agenda today is really to get updates from our key partners and organizations to help keep you informed as a council member, but also an opportunity for us to talk about what are some of the current issues that we're experiencing and how we might be responding to those issues, and to get your feedback and input on that. Particularly how we can collaborate or work together on addressing some of the issues, or establishing new programs. Of course, today is one of the items is it's just an update on the Sonoma County Homelessness Strategic Plan that was most recently adopted by the board. But there are two other strategic plans out there that are very relevant, including the City of Cloverdale's, which the council just adopted earlier this year, or I should say late 2022 now, as well as a homeless strategic plan that was guided, the development of was guided by Supervisor Gore for District 4. And that was, led up by a consultant, and had involvement of both the city of Cloverdale, city of Healdsburg, as well as the town of Windsor, along with Supervisor Gore and his aide. So we've got these 3 strategic plans out there. We can kind of look to them to accomplish different things because they have a different kind of geographic coverage area. One of the things that we have the benefit of is Margaret Slight from Reach for Home was recently appointed our representative for Northern Sonoma County to the Continuum of Care Board. And she probably could give us a little bit of background maybe on the strategic plan. We were hoping to have Stephen Sotomayor. He's a staff member with City of Healdsburg, who was the previous representative for the Continuum of Care. And what I wanted to kind of note, and we'll talk a little bit more in more detail, is we should think about a kind of a hierarchy. One, our local strategic plan, the county, the District 4 strategic plan, and then kind of the county-wide Sonoma County Homeless Strategic Plan. And they have a lot of overlap, but ours obviously has a very specific geographic area where District 4 starts to broaden out that perspective, and then you got county, which one of the critical issues is how do you fund all the services that we need and want, and that's where I think the county-wide or the Sonoma County Homeless Strategic Plan through the Continuum of Care really comes in. There's a lot of the funding on our local city. One of the things we did as part of the development, Kevin Thompson developed a community survey to assess what the community's input on what were the key priorities within the plan itself. One of the key points that came out of that survey response was concern about public safety, and in particular impacts on the community from encampments, particularly fire hazards, and secondarily just public safety in general. And so what we've seen in response to that are some specific actions that I think as you receive updates today, it'll kind of you'll kind of hear some of the feedback you'll see from our chief is how are we responding to some of the public safety concerns around homelessness. And again, it's always tempered with, well, what are the constraints and the rules and all that, or the institutional limitations sometimes we have. So I want to say welcome. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to cover. We won't be able to do it all in one meeting. So view this as an ongoing work in progress. But this is you're jumping in, and want to appreciate your time for getting involved on this issue and wanting to be part of the solution. So again, welcome, Chair and Vice Chair. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
And thank you very much, David. But I agree with you. I got this agenda and I started reading. I got some that are 95 pages, and I thought, well, I'm just going into a homeless meeting and we're just going to make magic happen. Okay, completely wrong on that. I understand now that there are 3 strategic plans that do overlap. There is a lot of information out there, and I don't see a quick fix to it in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, Chief will give us some updates, and I'm sure there's chiefs and other people, other staff that have their information from their towns. In my mind, the key to this is, everything's a little different, but in some way, shape, or form, things do have to mesh to have it be successful, whether it's happening in Windsor or Santa Rosa. If something happens in Santa Rosa and they, for instance, go through and clean up a section they're happy with, and notoriously a lot of them, sometimes we start seeing those folks up here, which adds a whole nother element to ours. So I want to see these mesh. I want to learn how they mesh. And like you said, I'm happy to jump in and be part of hopefully part of the solution and help where I can help. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah. Chief, do you have any?
Yeah, I think we want to move on to the
Yeah,
second
yeah.
part of the agenda, then we should get my report out. Okay.
Jerry, do you have
Any questions?
a hand raised by Nina at the Cloverdale Chamber?
Oh,
And I just wanted to comment on what you said, Brian, about the fact that people have to work, the communities, organizations have to work together. One of the things that we saw a couple of weeks ago when, and I don't know if it was a coincidence or not, was that when the encampments at the Joe Rodata Trail were moved along or whatever, we noticed, at least I noticed from my little fishbowl here, new people that decided Cloverdale would be the place to be for a while. So one thing is not an island. Everything affects everything else. And I don't know that that was exactly, that happened as a direct result, but it was coincidental.
well, yeah, thanks, Dina. And you know what, I was thinking the same thing about that is I don't know how that coincides with when they did the point in time count. Did the Joe Rodota close prior to that point in time, and how did that affect our numbers up here? Did we have more because of that, or?
Well,
That was my curiosity.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. What I can't tell you is exactly how many said they came from that area.
Right.
We have seen a few come and go, and some that are new faces to us. Whether they were transplanted in from the north or the south.
Right.
I try to get the officers to ask and inquire, specifically when Joe Rodota Trail was huge and they originally closed it. It was, hey, ask them, did they come from it? Because we'd be curious to know that. Because one of our concerns, of course, is, we get an influx of folks. We're the least available city to any of those resources.
Yeah.
So bringing people out here does not benefit anybody by any means. But I'll go on a little bit more about some of that stuff as we move on into that.
And Chair, it looks like Margaret has her hand raised.
Yeah, I was just gonna chime in because I participated in the point in time count in Cloverdale again this year for the second year in a row. And I would say, anecdotally speaking, we didn't see a huge uptick. It seemed fairly flat as far as the number goes. Obviously would prefer it go down, but we're not seeing a ton of new people. What we're seeing a lot of is actually in Healdsburg because we're the only winter shelter. So we get some Cloverdale people, which is normal. It's open for all northern Sonoma County, it's no big deal. But we're seeing people coming from like really odd places in Santa Rosa up to Healdsburg to winter shelter. And it's changing the culture of the shelter. And we've had to really, limit how many more people we can take, make sure that they're only from northern Sonoma County, if they're not from Cloverdale, Windsor, or Healdsburg originally, and they're not on our list, we've had to say sorry, just because it's just the dynamic is just really not safe. And so we've been seeing a little bit of that, but it's more so because there aren't any other like winter shelters or resources in the county. Like there's a shortage in the whole county, which is another great example of a ripple effect. Because once they get up to Healdsburg, maybe they creep up to Cloverdale, but I don't see a lot of people, staying. It seems like they're more like transient and just kind of passing through or whatever, at least based on when I was out there for point in time, which was, I think, and to answer your question, Joe Rodota was cleared like days before point in time, but they counted them ahead of time, I believe, or something like that. Okay. They mitigated it somehow and had a plan, but it was cleared just a few days before point in time.
Gotcha. Thank you, Margaret. Appreciate it. And Chief, did you have your?
Sure.
Notes?
Yeah, so what I'll talk to you about really is surrounding the city of Cloverdale. I know there's a lot you're trying to take in about the regional approach and then the city's approach. So one of the things I always like to do is start out providing some numbers of our responses to homeless related calls. In our computer aided system, we have a homeless related code that we use for any time we respond so that we can track that, right? And we can see. And so I can tell you, it's been a while since we've had a meeting. So I only went back to November 1st to current numbers. And we had 92 different homeless related calls in that period.
Since November.
And then we had an additional 83 that were specialized calls regarding homeless, like we got there and then it ultimately ended up being homeless related, but we didn't know up front. Because the homeless related up front are someone's lying in the sidewalk, walking the sidewalk, someone's right. So we would initially right away call that homeless related. But when we get to a specialized call, it may be something involving a mental health crisis. It may be a vandalism, it may be an assault, it may be a theft. Then it's related and then it's categorized that way. So there was an additional 83 of those in that time period. We continue to enforce a curfew ordinance in our plaza. It was one of the ways that we had to try to wrangle and control a little bit about some of the activities that were taking place in the plaza. So last year, we started to really look at the ability to utilize and enforce our curfew. It's been real successful. We've had a lot of positive feedback on that. Some of the things in response to how we're addressing our homeless issues is, I know the mayor has been very dedicated and, he's been wonderful in trying to help get this process moving along. As you guys know, we run into some difficulties in trying to deal with how to address people in crisis. And are they getting the needs and resources available to them? Measure O, promised us great things, and unfortunately Cloverdale hasn't seen the results of a lot of that. And we've had meetings recently with including Gore's office, talking about Measure O, talking about services that Cloverdale should see that we're not seeing. I know that was a positive meeting, and I know Margaret will attest to that too, but one of the things that we started to do is we started to focus individually on people rather than this regional approach for Cloverdale. We knew that there was about 4 or 5 folks in crisis here. Yeah. And if we started honing in as a team on one at a time, then we could get them the proper resources, find out exactly what's going on, and try to place them appropriately. To date, it's been, and Margaret's been huge in this process. And we've had success, at least for sure in one of our individuals who was probably our most critical. And we're working towards some of these others that you see, our regulars here and familiar faces. We've run into a couple of challenges with that. And, the mental health department is struggling with its staffing issues, and it's having its own share of problems, much like the rest of us are. So I understand that completely. It just creates a little bit of a challenge for us. So unfortunately, do some of these folks fall through the cracks and they ultimately end up getting arrested because they're out committing violations shortly after being released from a mental health evaluation? Yeah, we do run into that. And that's a little bit where our challenges are and why we're trying to really focus on the individual approach to try to prevent that from happening. But there's been a lot of response to this and a lot of assistance with Reach for Home and other organizations to help us out. One of the things we've done too is we've partnered with Reach for Home was wonderful in helping us get bus passes to help those in need in cold, extreme weather conditions to bus to Healdsburg in the time of need. Plus, we've also done our own extreme heat cooling centers here. And so we've made these efforts possible. One of our challenges, of course, is folks on that we're finding here don't want services, right? They're just choosing not to. This creates a problem for us when we're trying to figure out how to address them. And we do run across that, but we do provide still the cooling, and we've tried to align them with warming centers.
Where's the cooling center in Cloverdale?
We had it at the fairgrounds.
Oh, did you? Okay, gotcha.
And the vet's building a year prior to that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And just on the cooling center, the other thing that the chief sought to do was work with our community partners. So there was coordination with the library system about, because they're open during the hottest part of the day, just being there as a place to not so much for focus just on homeless, but just as a place to go for maybe our sensitive population, our community members, if they don't have air conditioning. They do have places, public places that they can go. You could go into the library and read a book, or do some kind of activity. And also at the Cloverdale Senior Center. So
yeah,
they did that coordination. Again, not all related specifically to homelessness, but also reaching out to our partners to address our sensitive populations in our community, and that there are options for them. Yeah, I just want to mention that because Chief, I know you put a lot of work into it.
Yeah, and I think the importance of that is, Cloverdale is taking the initiative to do what it can to try to assist in these times.
Yeah.
And, this goes including, in October, council adopted, and you've heard of this, the critical infrastructure ordinance, which is basically, I would call it an upgrade to our current camping ordinance. And I'm not going to get into the fine details of it, but really what it is was a measure so that we could protect our environment, our critical infrastructure, like our well system, our treatment plant, our public works, as well as, ensuring the safety of our community and residents that live near or around the river. These fires were breaking out from individuals in the river doing warming fires and or cooking. There was an enormous amount of fires that broke out there, although small, they were batted down quickly. Extremely concerning. So this was a way to help curb those issues, as well as the flooding situation, the high water levels, where that river in a minute all of a sudden becomes a swift water rescue, which we've experienced before. So this was just another initiative, and I want to make it clear the city of Cloverdale is not putting these in place to displace individuals by any means or try to target homeless, but rather trying to create this balance of safety to our environment, safety to our critical infrastructure, safety to our residents, and equally important, safety to them. Right, they're equally susceptible to the fires and the floods. So it was really an effort to try to, create a balance for those, and those come with trying to offer those down there resources when we have them have to leave. Right, when we give them notice and we tell them they're no longer allowed to camp here, it comes with what resources can we help you with. Unfortunately, folks just don't wish to have those. So, but at least those are being offered. But I just wanted to catch you up with where we're at in Cloverdale. Got a lot of stuff going on there, and it's going to continue.
Yeah.
And we certainly have a lot of help with Reach for Home and other organizations as well. So
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it. And that's one thing I wanted to say is, getting to know Reach for Home and some of the other partners, definitely. And also I wanted to throw out there, I have some experience with, everybody says a lot of these homeless guys are veterans or whatever, not keying in on the veteran themselves, but they're the guys that sometimes are tough to let them know that they need help. You know what I mean? They're going to reject it right away because they, in theory, have things under control. But I know that the clinics down in the VA clinics down in Santa Rosa, now they have the North Clinic and now the South Clinic, which is offering a lot more resources for people, and it's down on Challenger Way, I believe. And they're kind of the same thing. They're ramping up some of their stuff, trying to commit, and going the one-on-one approach. Instead of grabbing everybody and saying, we've got a huge problem, they're saying, hey, let's work on this individual, and they're having some success with it. So that's one thing I wanted to commend Cloverdale if they're doing that. If you're going the one-on-one approach, that's the one I see that has the most success. So thank you very much. And we're trying to get more resources, but they're far and few between sometimes. Everybody's strapped these days. So thank you.
And I just wanted to, Chief mentioned Measure O, and I wanted to touch on that because we'll go into a little bit later. Measure O was a ballot measure that was placed before the voters, and it received enough votes to pass. What it did was it established a quarter-cent sales tax to fund various services. They put them in 5 categories: behavioral health, emergency psychiatric or crisis services, mental health and substance abuse disorders, homeless behavioral health and care coordination, and then kind of last but not least, a transitional supportive housing. Unfortunately, in the funding mix, the housing piece got the least percentage of funding. It's out of the $25 million measure, it got 500,000. You can't even barely build a home for 500,000. But when Chief mentioned Measure O, one of our interests is, because it's a countywide tax measure, how do we ensure that we receive an equitable share, whatever. Now, there's no defined definition of what is North County, what's equitable for North County, and sometimes the way, and Margaret probably knows this pretty well, they may allocate this or look at it as it's based on that point in time count where the homeless population kind of based on a kind of a population of homelessness. But there's not a real definitive method, but point being is, you know, our voters, Sonoma County approved a countywide measure, and we have to try to find ways to ensure that some of that funding makes its way to our homeless population. And that's where we want to work with, you know, our partners, and Margaret particularly as our representative on Continuum of Care Board. How do we try to lobby, get support for these services that are being funded through Measure O in Northern Sonoma County? So it's a little bit of background, and I apologize if I'm being overly wordy. I just want to kind of give some context. When Chief mentioned Measure O, you know, how that relates to this broader discussion on homelessness.
Is there a deadline for distribution of Measure O to everybody? I understand the point in time and all that, but is there like a final deadline, like, hey, Measure O's here and somebody Cloverdale or Healdsburg, Windsor, percentages are decided, and
There's no real, that I recall, maybe Margaret can clarify, there's no real deadline as to these, right? This is an ongoing, because homelessness is ongoing, homelessness is a challenge. Yeah, she might be able to answer that.
Yeah, I can answer part of it. I know that the larger sum of money, I really don't know how that's being distributed. What I do know is right now there's a $3 million NOFA that's out. The deadline is March 17th. Cities can apply with community-based organizations. We can partner, you can partner with Reach for Home or any other community-based organization, or I can partner with the county. So Reach for Home is already looking at submitting a NOFA for Measure O. We were going to help get some funding for some mental health support, specifically what we think we need in Northern Sonoma County is a staff member at Reach for Home who can go out and actually be with the street outreach team, be at the L&M, be at Wallace House, build relationships with the individuals that are out, not only the unsheltered individuals, but the individuals who are in the housing program, so that they'll want to get mental health help. People don't just decide to, I mean, it takes a lot for someone to decide to get mental health help. But what we found is that if someone's on our staff and they're going out daily and getting to know people, people will meet with them. We had a person on our staff for about a month, and we had 4 or 5 appointments right away. So that was where our thoughts were heading, but I'd love feedback from the city of Cloverdale. We'd be happy to partner with you, or if you want to partner with someone else, that's fine too. But you know, if there's other things or resources that you think we could bake into this for the city of Cloverdale, I'd be happy to write that in.
perfect.
And it's only $3 million, so it's a tiny slice of that huge pie, but at least it's something to get us started. And I'm not sure how the rest of the funds are being decided. I just know this NOFA came out.
Thank you, Margaret.
And Chair, just looking at the attendees, I don't see a representative today from the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office.
No.
But Chief, have you had any contact with the Sheriff's Office at all? Likewise, we have had from time to time representatives from the Cloverdale Fire District come in, especially if we're discussing like vegetation management in camping areas. But I don't see a representative here from the fire district. In terms of continuum of care, maybe we can ask Margaret give an update as her role for both the North Sonoma County appointment and at her role as the executive director for Reach for Home.
Yeah, and I can kind of make it a little bit brief, and I see that you have the overarching strategic plan also on the agenda, so I can just, as an update, since that came through the Continuum of Care Board, if you want, I can give you the high level on that as well. The way that, so I'll start with the strategic plan. The way that the strategic plan came to be, just for high level overview, is Stephen Sotomayor. He had a committee of people from various cities, various city officials, mixed with community-based organizations, mixed with people with lived experience. And they went through a long drawn out process of really whittling down, where our focus areas should be countywide. And the three main areas that they came up with, and I think it really aligns with what everybody's trying to do, is more housing, better prevention. So 200 more units needed of interim housing, 1,000 more units needed of permanent supportive housing, stronger supportive services. What we've really started to understand and see, and what we've heard, I just had a lived experience roundtable with some people who've been out at SIAR for 5 to 10 years. And they're really wanting supportive services. They have recognized that people can't do this without mental health help. They can't do it without someone helping them get back into the system because they've been out of the system for so. That's one of the key main themes in the strategic plan, is to reorient how we approach outreach and do it consistently. And our service providers are strained, so we need to have better training for case managers, higher pay for case managers. We're doing a salary study, a pay wage study, just to kind of get an idea of what the ranges look like for different positions across CBOs. And then we need better, more. We need more. Our HUD guidelines for the ratios of what we should have for street outreach and housing case management. A lot of the CBOs are, double what's recommended, and you can't help people the same way if you're double or tripled up from what the best practice is. So countywide, we're looking at adding more case management out there for both street outreach and for housing. And in Northern Sonoma County, what that means is, already through private funding, and hopefully we're looking for a little more funding, we'll have a case manager dedicated to Cloverdale for housing. If we have up to 6 units at our Butler property in Cloverdale. We have 5 units at our partnership home in Cloverdale. And then we have the 6 units at Wallace House. So Cloverdale has a decent amount of supportive housing available, but it's permanent supportive. So people aren't rolling in and out quickly. It's very supportive, but we would like to have one case manager just dedicated to housing program in Cloverdale. So there's some funding coming out for the rural communities. And we think that we might be able to also get an additional case manager on top of the privately funded one. And that would really get our ratios down for Northern Sonoma County. So that's one of the pillars. And then the last thing, the last theme in the strategic plan is operate as one coordinated system. So adopt and follow long-term funding strategy, evaluate programs better directly, funding accordingly. Communicate better across the board and address inequity, including replacing the VI SPDAT, which I think has always been pretty controversial. They're looking at taking different data points and coming up with a better way to prioritize people into housing in the system. The VI SPDAT can sometimes be a little off, and people who qualify as rapid rehousing really should be chronically homeless and those sorts of things, which makes it really hard. If someone's really more like scoring at a chronically homeless and they pop up as rapid rehousing, we only have 2 years to get them completely independent on their own in a unit, which is like impossible. So that's a great thing. And then the one thing that I've really tried to focus on for Northern Sonoma County is to make sure that we always have a regional approach with, even though we want to be coordinated as a system being Sonoma County and we want everything to flow, we have to have geographical preferences and we need to have geographical differences, because Cloverdale is different than Healdsburg's, different than Windsor, is different than the whole county of Sonoma. And so I bring that voice to the table quite frequently in the Continuum of Care Board. I think it's extremely important. Another thing that I think is really good, Chief Ferguson, is the whole county is going to that by names list approach, where we take 1 or 2 individuals at a time and we figure them out. And we're working right now at seeing how that's all going to fit in countywide. Reach for Home does a case conference once a week, and we've been doing it for the past year and a half to 2 years, we're kind of early adopters in that, which is kind of how Cloverdale, we kind of all started integrating, and I think we've seen success. But they're going to now funnel that sub-regional approach into one big list and somehow, I don't know yet, make it countywide. But we will still just keep doing what we're doing. I think the key is we keep our heads down, we keep doing what we're doing, we keep focusing on each individual person, and we keep focusing on what each individual town needs in Northern Sonoma County, and we'll start to see, as we have, start to see a big difference. It's great that we have, a big strategic plan, but I think what we're doing funnels into it anyway. So I'm not too concerned about, making sure we're meeting the goals of the big county plan, because we're focusing on it already by doing what we're doing. Any questions about the strategic plan in general?
Margaret, I guess maybe a comment and a question. I mean, kind of part of my assessment of the benefit of the strategic plan is that it helps to guide funding decisions. There's a tremendous, besides Measure O, which is locally generated sorts of funds, a lot of funds come from HUD, so from the federal government down, and most in the last few years, Governor Newsom has also allocated funding to address homeless issues, and so those often come through the county, and it's the continuum of care that is usually most typically the entity within the state code that is responsible for oversight and administration of those funds. Now, the actual paperwork usually is done through agency staff, but the board of directors is the entity that gets to allocate the funding amongst all of the assess the needs and allocate those resources. Is that a fair statement, Margaret? And if so, is there anything you want to elaborate on about all the different funding out there?
Yeah, no, that's a very fair statement. It definitely is going to drive funding decisions, which I'm actually a little bit excited about, because I think those three main themes are what we really need. I mean, we're all aligned. I think we all need those things. And for example, right now, like I said, there's a funding and evaluation committee to the Continuum of Care Board, and they're looking at some rural funding streams right now. And because of the strategic plan, they're looking at, okay, how can we secure, funding so that for 3 years we can have case manager salaries paid for? And let's look at which organizations in the rural areas. So it's everybody except for Santa Rosa and Petaluma. Let's see where their ratios are, and per the strategic plan, get them some case managers. And so I think, if we can look at that globally, but then also regionally, I think it's going to make a huge difference in kind of the whole system. And like we talked about earlier, like you were talking about earlier, if something happens down in Rohnert Park, it can actually impact Cloverdale. And once you get people up there, it's hard to get them out of there. I feel like it's like a, it's a weird thing. So yes, I think that's a totally fair statement. And I think that it'll make it easier to leverage what we need funding for, because everything kind of fits into the plan, I think, in general.
And that's one of the more recent changes that occurred, which was just about 2 years ago, was the governance structure for the Continuum of Care Board. We didn't have a regionally appointed representative on the board, and the result of that was that the funding was kind of directed to other areas and other organizations, and all good causes, but and they're all doing good work. But I think with this new governance structure, where we're able to now appoint or have say in the appointment of our representative, in this case, Margaret, who is really involved at a local level, it's really helpful for us, because she's gonna be able to understand our neighborhood and be able to see how that funding is going to tie back to our community. So I just want to acknowledge the real benefit we get from having someone like Margaret sit on our continuum, sit on the Continuum of Care Board and represent us.
Well, and just to also say that, it goes both ways, like feel free to, if there's something that you think funding would really help in the city of Cloverdale, or, if it's for Reach for Home or not, another CBO, I mean, the city, whatever it is. I'm also on the funding and evaluation committee. I'm on the Continuum of Care board. I'm on the coordinated entry committee. I'm on the HMIS committee. So I have tentacles kind of out everywhere. And my role is to have your voices be heard. So, and if there's funding that a city can, go for, and you need a CBO, we're always available to be that CBO. Or if it's not us, that's fine too. I'm happy to help however I can. So, anytime you see something, there's a lot of NOFAs that just sort of fall from the sky, like the CDBG money that just came out, that cities had to apply for. CBOs weren't allowed, but you had to have some sort of a partnership. We're here to help you with any of that. So, always feel free to give me feedback and let me know what you need, and I'll go try to find it. I know right now mental health is like the thing, so I'm working on it. We are hiring, like I said, a mental health professional, 15 hours a week. Some of those hours will be spent in Cloverdale, and they can do pretty quick scheduling of appointments through partnership, also. And so I think that'll help us some. And then the L&M Village, we're going to be opening 8 more additional rooms, and we have several Cloverdale people on our by names list that we're looking at to potentially come in to either Wallace House or the L&M. I was kind of counting here while we were sitting here, and it kind of ebbs and flows a bit depending on, some people we can't find, and then we find them. But right now, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have at least 6 people flagged to come in to either Wallace House or L&M from Cloverdale. So we're slowly chipping away. We have, I think, 2 people right now already at the L&M from Cloverdale. The first person that was in was from Cloverdale, the very first person at the L&M. We have 2 people at the L&M with housing vouchers already. All but one person has increased their income since they've started at the L&M. And we just opened November 21st, and we've had, I want to say 7 individuals out of the 15 that are there right now take advantage of medical appointments in some way, shape, or form to help, with eye vision problems, back problems, all sorts of things like that. So I just want you guys to know that Cloverdale is on the list for that. It's not just a Healdsburg resource, it's Northern Sonoma County resource. And then Wallace House, we should have open in the next couple of weeks. We just we're looking at hiring that case manager that I was talking about so that we can make sure that we're successful. We don't want to just throw people in there and not have the support that they need. And it is all privately funded. We're not taking any money from the county for that project. We are looking for a little bit of additional funding because it's privately funded, but what it'll do if we can keep it privately funded is it'll allow us to not have to use coordinated entry, meaning Reach for Home can look at the by names list and we can pick who we think will be ready and successful in the program versus having someone given to us that we don't know or that might not be a good fit for that type of living situation, which is a very particular situation. It's not going to help people who need severe mental health help, unfortunately. I mean, we just don't have the ability to do that, which is why we have to keep pushing the county and keep doing what we're doing on that. But anybody else, we also would love referrals, Chief Ferguson, if you know people that you think would be successful there. Just keep me posted and we'll put them on our list as well. And I think that's it for my updates. I already talked about the point in time count, so.
Hey, Margaret. Maybe for the benefit of our new council members, you can just let them know what Reach for Home. I'm not sure how much background they know about your organization. Sorry, Nina, I see your hand now, but about what you guys do and how you help Cloverdale. You kind of just went over that, but I'm not sure they know who you guys are.
No, that's okay. We started we've been around for quite some time as a part of St. Paul's Episcopal Church down in Healdsburg. In 2014, we became a nonprofit, and we focus on unsheltered individuals. We go out to encampments. I'd say in the last 2 years, we are 100% now shifted to being housing focused. I think in the past, we were a little more focused on survival, which is great. We want people to survive. Like, don't get me wrong, we're still helping people survive. But if you want to target tent, let's talk about getting into coordinated entry. Let's talk about what your housing goal might be. Not that we'll withhold that. You know, we're not going to, again, we're not going to allow someone to not survive, but really trying to flip it into how can we leverage this tent or sleeping bag into helping you think about what you might want from a housing standpoint long term. So that's kind of our approach out there, is getting everybody to start thinking about housing, even if they don't want housing. You know, how can we take one little step, you know, and just chip away at it that way. We have, like I said, the Wallace House, Butler Homes, and Partnership House in Cloverdale. We come up to Cloverdale twice a week. A lot of times we're always on Tuesdays at Living Waters Church with Providence and with the shower ministry from Redwood Gospel Mission. We were at St. Vincent de Paul before, and their program kind of shifted. But what we're doing there is trying to build relationships, trying to get people to think about housing. We have a community health worker that comes up on Tuesdays and helps make sure people get their flu shot, refers them over to Providence, gives them health and wellness information, make sure that they're connected to medical and mental health when they can, get that sort of thing. And then we have our housing program, which is case management, wraparound services, all of those sorts of things. I'd say that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Margaret.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you again, Margaret.
Yeah, thank you. And next time I'll try to make it in person so we can.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nina, did you have something?
I do. I just have a quick question for Margaret. Can you give us sort of a 30,000-foot level look at what is required for somebody to go into a Wallace House or a Butler partnership? Forget the other.
Yeah, partner. Yeah, Butler
facilities that
partnership.
you
Yeah, you
manage.
said them all.
Okay.
So for partnership in Butler, they have to be, I believe, chronically homeless, because those are coordinated entry units. Or no, in Butler, they can be rapid rehousing, excuse me. Butler rapid rehousing, which is a lower acuity. A lot of times there are people who have not been homeless for a whole year. They maybe just lost their housing, and we can scoop them back up and get them into housing. And like I was saying earlier, that's just a 2-year program, but we try to get them to move on quicker. So it's like, they just got spit out, and we're going to pick them up and help them get back up on their feet, case management, the whole thing, help them increase their income, and then get them back out into an independent unit. Partnership is all permanent supportive housing, and they are chronically homeless or literally homeless. Intensive case management, they all live in the house together, and the case manager office is there as well. And it is veteran focused as well. We're at a almost functional 0, I think, for veterans. And so there are non-veterans there, but if there's a veteran, we prioritize the veteran for that housing situation. Now, both of those have to go through that coordinated entry system I mentioned before. So if there's an opening, we give the referral to the coordinated entry operator, and they have to pull the person that scores next on their list that fits either of those programs. So rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing. And then Reach for Home gets that referral and decides whether or not they're a fit. And a lot of times, we have to be careful. We can't just reject people just to reject them. There has to be a valid reason, but we also want to keep it focused on Northern Sonoma County residents with a priority towards Cloverdale. So it's a little tricky at times, which is why Wallace House is going to be so nice. The Wallace House, we're pretty flexible, and it's really going to come down to the fit. Can they live in close quarters with other people? Are they going to be good neighbors? Because it's very close to, some, same with Partnership Home. It's very close to neighbors. We don't want to cause any issues. And do they want to work towards housing? We're thinking that it's probably going to be also like a kind of more of a transitional housing program. So We're hoping we can move people through Wallace House, you know, maybe within a year or two and get them to more independent housing. Where partnership home is permanent supportive. So yes, we're trying to still move people on, but they're likely going to take at least 2 to 3 years. I don't know if that helped at all.
Yeah.
But really fit, you know, so think like, what is Wallace House like? Where's it at? What, you know, we want people who are not going to be loud and you know, people who, you know, we can help people in our other housing units who maybe have a little bit more of behavioral needs. We still, you know, the high needs is still something we just can't do as a CBO, but like the L&M, we have case managers there more. So if someone's really needing just that space to kind of decompress a little, the L&M is a better fit for them because we can put them there for, you know, 3 months, get them used to being inside, get people used to being around people, and then go to Wallace House. So we're trying to be really strategic about how we're using all of the different housing opportunities.
And Margaret, if I can just a pause real quick, I want to check in with our chair and vice chair. You've heard Margaret mention the L&M.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the L&M? Do you want to?
Not 100%, but here's what I know about the L&M. So that's the previous hotel motel down in Healdsburg that just opened recently. And but how many units are in there? Like 8 or 10? Am I
No,
wrong?
we'll have 22 units when they're done with construction, which we keep thinking we've been told 2 weeks for like 2 months now. So we're hoping soon. We have 15, we have 14 units.
Running.
We have 14 units currently with 15 people living there.
Gotcha. Yeah, so the city of Cloverdale, in partnership with Margaret Reach for Home, they applied for funding through what was called the Home Key program that was established by Governor Newsom
Oh, my
to
dearest.
help with converting underutilized property into housing, you know, and types. And so they've been working on finishing up the improvements to that you know, former hotel. And so you hear L&M Village, that's the name. And it's a location that's available to our residents, like Margaret mentioned, or, you know, to our population, for those that are in need of housing. And that they've got, is it fully permanent? Is it considered permanent supportive housing, Margaret? Or what would be the?
No, it's oh, sorry, my internet got a little weird and it sounded like you had finished. I apologize.
Oh, no, I did. Go ahead.
It's considered an interim housing program. So it's a type of shelter really, but it's a non-congregate shelter. And it's not 24 hours or drop in or anything like that. It's for chronically homeless individuals. We don't have to go through coordinated entry. So again, it's our by names list that we have that we're working on to, you know, who's the most vulnerable, who needs the help the most, who's going to be a good fit in that setting. 22 units, they can stay for 30 days and then renew every 30 days for up to 6 months. But if someone's there 6 months and they're working on their housing goals and their income and all of those things, and it's just because there's not a pipeline to a house or a housing unit or whatever, we're not going to return someone to homelessness if they're working on what they need to be working on. Yeah, it wraparound services. We have a gardening program, art therapy. We took a whole van load of people to a job fair recently at Luther Burbank Center. We have a job program with Hansel Auto Group down in Santa Rosa that we're working on. And we're hopefully going to be fully operational and fully open, like I said, in 2 weeks. I'm just going to safely say by March 1st because they keep, the construction keeps not getting done. But anybody wants to come down and see it, I'm always available to give you a tour and talk to you a little bit more about the property.
Now, from the L&M, you were mentioning the Wallace House up here. So they do say they go 3 months, 6 months at the L&M. And then you were mentioning if they transition on there, are they candidates to come up to the Wallace House? Am I correct on that?
It's all individualized, so it's not incorrect. If someone's at the L&M and they're, you know, needing a little more time, but they've stabilized, they're doing good, but it's just not, in 6 months is not enough for them. That is an option now because we don't have coordinated entry required for the Wallace House. So it's a possibility. And we did talk about 1 or 2 people that we think might be a fit. But it's all individualized. So it really just depends. But yeah, it's possible, you know, if someone's doing really well, but it's like, there's just no way they're going to be able to afford a unit in 6 months, but they're making progress. Their behavior's good. They're good neighbors. That would be when we would consider, gosh, you know, we have a unit here. Let's see, you know, if we can get them more support and get them on their feet.
Once again, thank you, Margaret.
So, Margaret did a great job at providing an overview on the strategic plan, and included in your packet is a copy of the Board of Supervisors. They call it summary report, kind of like our agenda report. It's, you know, high level overview, and then of course the actual strategic plan itself. That was adopted by the board. It was a Tuesday before last. So it's you know, now in effect, and concurrently as Margaret mentioned, the board supervisors approved the release of a NOFA, or notice of funding availability, for the $3 million. And I mean, one question that comes to mind with that is, you know, one, is there a project that we would like to apply for? Or maybe, and what might make the most sense given the fairly rapidly approaching deadline is, I think there's a lot of alignment with what Margaret and Reach for Home are seeking in terms of, you know, that full-time case manager is, does this committee want to recommend, you know, a letter of support, or, you know, say we're a partner in that grant application, and maybe or just coordinate with Margaret on how we might be part of that, because ultimately, if it's successful, I really believe that will help us out for Reach for Home to have that additional case manager. So it may be something we would want to voice our support for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm for a case manager. I mean, I see that as a positive across the board. The more case, obviously we're shy on case managers throughout. That's huge. So I would 100% support that as another case manager, assigning one somewhere where in turn, if Cloverdale can benefit from it a little bit, it adds somebody else to come up here twice a week, once a week, or whatever, 100%, because in my mind, the mental part of it is huge, and guiding somebody through that and getting them, you know, just managing the whole thing is part of getting rid of this. You know, I'm not saying it's going to get rid of it now, but it's a huge help to have another case manager. So I'm 100% on board with that and supporting Reach for Home on that.
Margaret, is it what would be beneficial for you to have from the city? Would it be a letter? You want us to identify us as partners? Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, thank you so much for recommending supporting that. It's a huge help to us. I would say I'm still trying to figure out whether the NOFA for Measure O is going to support the mental health support case manager or the regular case manager. Or because there's another funding. So there's a little bit I need to think about, but a letter of support would be great. If you don't mind, can I touch back with you when, you know, maybe in the next few days, and just kind of make sure that, you know, that.
Yeah, what I will do, based on what I'm hearing today from our subcommittee members, is coordinate with you, and then I would bring it to council, either, you know, listed on the agenda, or informally just get support for us to sign a letter of support, you know, in recognition of your grant application.
That would be great. Because the NOFA can cover several other things. Have you had a chance to take a peek at it?
I've reviewed it, but I
Okay.
in detail, you know, what we would seek to apply, we would probably be looking to partner with you ultimately, I think.
Well, let me take a look, because I was going to do the mental health professional, is what I was thinking of applying for through Measure O. The case manager, I was hoping we'd get through that rural funding that is coming through the county. So I was thinking, gosh, if we get that from that, then we can, use this for mental health. Let me check in and see the timing of that other funding source. I just want to make sure we're leveraging all the funding we can get. And but I definitely am thinking one of those two things. It sounds like either of those would be aligned with Cloverdale, and I'll touch back and see what your thoughts are before I apply. And thank you for offering the letter.
You have any thoughts on that?
I have a question, and maybe this would never work, but is it, Margaret, are you familiar with the Downtown Streets team?
Yeah, Petaluma has them.
And they're in San Rafael, Nevada. Is it at all possible that we could get them up here for, say, Windsor, Healdsburg, and Cloverdale? Because they've got like really good wraparound services, and they could maybe, like co-help with your organization. And then, I know, because I've known people that have worked for Downtown Streets team. It teaches people responsibility. They get all the wraparound services like the mental health and everything else. And it really does kind of prepare them. Some of them become managers. It prepares them for living on their own.
Yeah, it's a great program. We looked at it about 2 years ago, and they were expanding into Petaluma at that time, I believe, and it just wasn't something that was going to work. But I'd be happy to go back and revisit it. It's definitely a great program. I can't remember if there was any other reason why they weren't looking at Northern Sonoma County, but I know when I was asking about it, it was when they were expanding and focusing on Petaluma. So thank you for recommending that. I'll go back and see where they're at right now and just kind of have another check-in with them.
Thank you.
And Margaret, it may be helpful, maybe to talk about what the services that is offered through Reach for Home, some of your street outreach services. That I know that it's not a perfect alignment with what a Downtown Streets team does, but there is some overlap.
Exactly. Yeah. Downtown Streets, to your point, is they have, it's like a well-greased machine where they have like t-shirt colors, and there's a leader, and it's like a leadership kind of thing. Reach for Home, the overlap is we help people with increasing their income, we help people with coordinated entry, we help people with medical appointments, mental health appointments, getting their driver's license. We'll take them down to Santa Rosa, get them Social Security, help connect them to pretty much any service they might need. We help get them to court. We help, get them what is that, court referral program. Pretty much any wraparound service that someone could need, we can provide to them. We just don't have, they really do have a good program where there's like a leadership component and stuff that's super cool. We don't have that piece, but we have all the other pieces basically. And we're expanding our street outreach team. So we should be able to serve Cloverdale, instead of 2 days a week, potentially 3. It just depends on if we can hire someone. So.
One of the conversations that we had with the county when it came to providing additional street outreach services and behavioral health services was the challenges that they have with filling the positions that they have funding for, but it's actually getting individuals to apply and take those positions. So I think maybe it's a reflection of our geography to a certain extent, but it's also a reflection of cost of living and folks who are interested in this field and some of the challenges. So it's kind of a multifaceted issue that to get those services here, and it's more than just funding. And so I know that's one of our constraints that we're trying to work through, and how do we, there's the will, and just finding out how do we make it happen? How do we make it happen?
Yeah. Thank you, Margaret. I mean, do we have anything else on Reach for Home?
It looks like Nina's hand is up again. Sorry, I was just gonna point that out.
And I'm
Yeah.
sorry to keep kind of barging in, but yeah. So I just wanted to lend you our support as well. Happy to draft a letter on behalf of our board of directors and our business community. Just, that's it. That simple.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That was successful right there, huh? All right, well, are we done with the Reach for Home, and we don't have anybody from Alexander Valley Health or anybody else unless we've got any
Yeah, I
more
don't
Reach for Home
I don't see
questions?
anything.
No? All right, and that's and then any new business? I mean, we've kind of gone through.
Yeah, strategic plan was really the only item. It was no action, just really informational. Margaret did a great job in giving the overview. And then, you know, related to that, the notebook for Measure O. Again, just there are other resources. Some of the things that we can talk about in the future is, you know, the direction and updates on the Northern Sonoma County or District 4 Supervisor Board's efforts, as well as even taking a look at our strategic plan. I know that the superintendent left, but you know, one of the key goals in our plan is around prevention.
Yes.
And so that means you know, trying to address, you know, some of the issues before folks, you know, we've been really focused on the immediate emergency. But we know there are folks that are, you know, on the margins, that maybe might miss a rent payment and things like that. So you know, that's an area that we haven't spent a lot of time on. Just is for the food for thought for the subcommittee. Again, we've been trying to address, you know, the most critical issues. But there's still a lot of work to do there. But there's still some other opportunities, you know, to look at other programs that you know, tied to, again, prevention or expanding home additional opportunities for especially our lower income residents.
And just to chime in on that, it is something that Reach for Home does a tiny piece of it right now, but as we continue to move forward, one of our goals in our strategic plan at our organization for this year is to get a case manager dedicated to just eviction diversion. So on top of the housing case managers that I mentioned, having a case manager, you know, if someone's about to lose their housing because of behavior or because of income, you know, they lost their job or they're, you know, precariously housed. Having a case manager be able to come over to their home and start case managing them before they lose their housing, get them mental health help before they lose their housing. So that's kind of also something that we're looking at adding a more robust program behind to serve Cloverdale as well. But we have to baby steps. We're a little organization. We started the year last year with 6 employees and we ended the year with 14. We started 2 years ago with an $800,000 budget. And because of Project Homekey, now we have a $2.4 million budget. So we're just, you know, drinking from a fire hose, but that's where we need to go. We need to stop people from becoming homeless in the first place.
And also, Margaret, I might, I'll stay in touch with you, but I'd love to come down and tour that L&M just to check it out. I think that'd be very interesting. So I'll coordinate with you a time or get a hold of you and we'll figure that out. So thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody have anything else? You have anything?
No.
No? All right, and we don't have any standing items, and anybody have any future agenda items they'd like to bring up?
I think maybe by the time our next meeting is scheduled, may have an update on the District 4 strategic plan, so that might be valuable just to see if there's any current items to report out for that. And so put that down.
All right, so thank you all for attending. That about comes to the end of it. We're gonna adjourn the meeting at 2:39. I thank you all for showing up.
Thank you. Take
Thank you.
care.
Real quick, I know